Hello, everyone, and welcome to Global Newsmaker Focus. Every Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern, right here on the Global Radio Alliance, you will hear guests from a wide spectrum of fields, talking about current events and developments that affect our world. Together, let's analyze the latest news and developments on Global Newsmaker Focus, every Friday night at 8 p.m. And now, I give you your host for Global Newsmaker Focus, Patrice Sheridan.
Welcome, everyone, to this October 6th edition of Global Newsmaker Focus on your contact for alternative talk radio, KGRA-radio.com. This is Patrice Sheridan speaking. Tonight's featured program guest is Norio Hayakawa. First, a reminder to our listeners, don't forget to visit the new, fully integrated KGRA radio website, including our listener lounge. Also, while at the KGRA-radio.com website, select the KGRA Conference Connection tab on the main menu. As KGRA goes on tour, here you will find events, dates, and locations of all upcoming KGRA-sponsored live-on-location appearances. Come see the KGRA crew and many of your favorite KGRA hosts at the biggest events in the UFO and paranormal fields. Now returning to tonight's program, our featured guest is Norio Hayakawa, researcher, journalist, musician, and composer. Norio is the director of the Civilian Intelligence News Service. Although he has spent many years investigating Area 51 in Nevada to determine the facts on the importance of that facility, he is skeptical of any UFO or alien connection to the base. The Japanese TV crew and Norio also visited Dulce, New Mexico at that time. In March of 2009, Norio organized the first underground base conference that took place at the Jicarilla Apache community. Although Norio subsequently spoke at several Dulce conferences, he has expressed his skepticism about the actual physical existence of such a base in New Mexico without necessarily debunking the claims of those who have seen some strange goings-on in that area. Norio's research in the field of ufology and related subjects has spanned several decades. His research started in 1961. He describes himself as an unorthodox ufologist. He will discuss how he became convinced of the reality of the UFO phenomenon itself when his skeptical mother had a sighting of what she clearly described then as a flying saucer in 1975 during broad daylight in Japan. But his question is, does it represent conclusive evidence of physical ET visitations on Earth? Or has the phenomenon always been intentionally deceptive by design? He will discuss how personal physical observations of UFOs vary in time and paraphysical materialization by extra-dimensional intelligences. Norio's website is https://noriohayakawa.wordpress.com/about/ Norio's Facebook pages can be found at Facebook under Fernando N. Hayakawa and Civilian Intelligence News Service. Norio, thank you so for joining us tonight. The articles and essays at your Civilian Intelligence News Service make for great reading and information.
Thank you so much, Patrice, for inviting me again in your wonderful show. And I am privileged to be on your program. And I know that I can present something new. In fact, I have never spoken in depth on the reality of the UFO phenomenon itself until tonight, actually, because I have always spoken about underground bases, such as, well, actually any military base, such as Area 51 and alleged Dulce underground bases. I haven't given hundreds of lectures on those subject matter, but the UFO phenomenon itself, this is really the first time that I will be speaking.
Oh, I'm thrilled. And on this particular topic aspect, I'd like to reference here your fascinating article at your noriohayakawa.wordpress.com Civilian Intelligence Network site. It's entitled UFOs, Physical Extraterrestrials or Paraphysical Extra-dimensionals. And on this particular point, with the article posted August 15th, 2017, you have some great comments. First, help me with this. The first finding is that the phenomenon seems to materialize and dematerialize on an at-will basis.
Exactly. This is my conclusion, or the only alternative explanation, as far as I'm concerned, after researching this subject since 1961. The reason I came to this conclusion is basically because of a tremendous sighting of a flying saucer that my mother claimed to have seen in 1975. In those years, in the 70s, especially in the late 70s, though, I have begun to really accept the possibility that UFOs may not necessarily be nuts and bolts physical phenomena, but rather something different. And in 1975, my mother's amazing sighting kind of confirmed to me that the UFO phenomenon is not nuts and bolts physical phenomenon, and I still maintain that stance even now. And so, most people haven't really heard from me the details of why I think this is not physical nuts and bolts physical phenomenon, but rather what I call a paraphysical intrusion into our physical dimension by a force that exists in the extra-dimensional level of this cosmos.
Wow, how intriguing. And, elsewhere at your website from another article, I found this very thought-provoking opinion. Now, here I'm quoting you again, that it's the phenomenon itself, they, who control the event and not us. It's the phenomenon, they, who pre-select the observer, the location, and time, end quote. This sounds a bit like the actions of a predator to me.
Well, in a sense, you can say that, definitely, because it's not us who control the thing. It's them, or whatever is causing this phenomena. We have no control over when and where this phenomenon is observed by the observer. We have no control. It's they, or whoever is causing this phenomena, has total control of the situation. This is the reason why, maybe because over the years I have tried to see what I definitely can say a UFO, but yet, since 1961, I haven't seen anything that I can clearly say is a UFO, and I've been trying, but I came to the realization that it's not me who controls or who selects the observer, but they. Whatever that is the controller. And this is the reason why I mention my mother's sighting in 1975, and of course, even other researchers that I highly respect, such as Dr. Jacques Vallée, also have the same position that we are not the controllers. They are, whatever they may be. And this is the reason why I have decided to really come out to speak about this, because there aren't too many people that speak about this subject matter of selection of location and time. And of course, to be more specific and interesting, I have concluded that this phenomenon cannot remain in our physical dimension for more than a few seconds or a few minutes at a time. They have to dematerialize somehow. They cannot remain in our dimension. And this is really something that very few people talk about. For some reason or other, the UFO phenomenon is not a phenomenon that lasts, for a long time. It doesn't. And this is a mystery. This is a mystery to me. And so I came to this two things: the pre-selection of the observers, the pre-selection of the location, and also the inability of this phenomenon to last for a long time in our physical dimension. It cannot last. And the third thing is that this phenomenon cannot be photographed in clarity. These are the characteristics that I have come to.
Those are fascinating observations. Now, Norio, many UFO photos are taken, if I'm correct, using infrared, the infrared lens. Have you noticed this as well?
Yes, I have seen hundreds of infrared photos of what some people describe as UFOs, but basically, to me, most UFO photos are simply photos of just unrecognizable lights. So, in other words, I'm saying that I have yet to see any clear shaped object so far. And, well, I wish I could say that I have seen a clear picture of a flying saucer or UFO, but I have yet to see any. And this is another reason that this is another thing that is a mystery to me. The phenomenon exists, no question about it. Although I hate to say it in such a strong terms, I would rather say the phenomenon seems to be real. And so does researchers such as Dr. Jacques Vallée. He never stated that the phenomenon is real, but he stated that the phenomenon seems to be real, and that's the wording I prefer. By the way, I do not prefer the word paranormal. I would rather prefer the word paraphysical instead of paranormal, because the word paranormal has a connotation of it's too broad and too general, and it gives you an impression of something else. But I like the word paraphysical. This is the reason why I have used the word paraphysical in conjunction with the paraphysical materialization into our dimension by an entity or a force that coexist with us but are on the extra dimensional level.
Very, very intriguing. Now, Norio, you mentioned your concerns regarding the UFO crafts, reported various speeds, various velocities there, and their propulsion systems. Does that fall within the paraphysical materialization study of this concept?
I think it relates somewhat because of one of the strange things about the UFO phenomenon is its capability to influence part of our physical dimension, such as affecting the radar and so on. So this is something that fits in with the paraphysical phenomenon. And so, again, this is a mystery to me. In other words, the sudden materialization and dematerialization. Now, one of the things I like to say is that this phenomenon seemed to be kind of a deceptive phenomenon in the sense that a person who sees a UFO taking off suddenly is given an impression that the UFO is using some kind of a advanced propulsion system to actually fly away at rapid speed into the sky, and it's possible, and I think it's most probable that this is a deception. It's an impression that is given to the observer by those that are causing this phenomenon.
Fascinating. And then I have three brief questions on the possible extra-dimensional aspect of UFOs, and of course, you're just the person with whom I should be speaking on this really fascinating aspect. Now, Norio, just very quickly, Bill's all excited. He has a question coming in. This is from Bill, our show producer. Now, question for Norio. Sir, did you research the Japan Airlines flight 1628, which occurred November 1985 near Alaska? And if so, what were your conclusions? He's also saying it might be 1986.
I think it was 1986, and this was definitely a famous case, no question about it. And what I would like to say about this case is that, yes, I cannot deny that the pilot saw what he couldn't explain. In fact, the pilot of that Japan Airlines said that he saw a humongous reddish object that actually was so large that it was unbelievable. And so who am I to deny his claims? But at the same time, also, this phenomenon seems to have appeared somehow on and caught on radar on the ground. So the phenomenon happened, but does it conclusively prove that we had been visited at that time by physical extraterrestrial entities in their physical spacecraft? It does not. It's a conjecture. And so I always point out this undeniable statement, and nobody can deny this statement. And the statement is, we have yet to see any conclusive, physical, credible, documentary evidence whatsoever that we have ever been visited by actual physical extraterrestrial biological entities in their physical spacecraft of any kind. Not one single physical evidence, yet the phenomenon is there. I'm not denying the phenomenon is not there because it's there. Just like maybe later on I'll tell you about the amazing sighting that my mother had in 1975, which convinced me of the reality of the phenomenon. I am not a supporter any longer of an actual ET visitation in an ET spacecraft on Earth. I'd like to believe that, but I can't because, as I said, I've been doing this since 1961, and I have spoken to many, many, many people. I have visited many places of interest, here and practically all over. I visited South America, Japan, many parts of the United States, visited location of sightings, and yet I have still have no definitive, conclusive, and that's the word, conclusive evidence of actual physical extraterrestrial entities in physical spacecraft. And the reason I say is because at the present level of science, the empirical science that we all know about, and that's the only way to measure things, unfortunately, right now. Empirical science seems to point out that it is physically impossible for an actual physical object to traverse the amazing distances from outer space without encountering tiny dust particles that can actually destroy that physical object as it traverses the expanse of outer space. There are tens of thousands, probably millions of tiny dust particles that are traveling, and if the physical object is traveling at the speed of light or slightly slower than the speed of light, that object will be totally destroyed. And so this is the reason why most scientists and astronomers in the world have a very skeptical view of an actual physical visitation of physical aliens to our Earth. Yes, we talk about changing time and space, and we talk about quantum physics, and you talk about wormholes and all this kind of things. But unfortunately, right now, all those technologies are future technologies, and we have not even come close to these new technologies. So as far as I'm concerned, at this moment, I'm very skeptical of space travel into outer space. And this may be the reason why, even recently, just a few weeks ago, NASA is kind of changing its mind on even sending men to Mars due to the extreme presence of dangerous radiations. So we're still having difficulty sending men to even close areas, Mars or whatsoever. But imagine what obstacles there are. There are so many obstacles to traverse across the space. And why I am kind of skeptical about the UFOs as conclusive evidence of extraterrestrial physical visitations in a physical spacecraft by physical aliens is this, simply that it's just, to me, it's not possible. But I believe that the UFO phenomenon is a materialization into our physical dimension by the sentient intelligence that dwell in the extra-dimensional levels. And this is the only way, perhaps, for them to interact with us. And first of all, they seem to not really like to interact with us to begin with. So, as Dr. Jacques Vallée said, it's not us who control these things, it's them. They are the ones that choose when and where and which person or groups of people to do something, to materialize for a very short time. So I'm not saying that these things cannot remain, for more than a few seconds or a few minutes at one time. I'm talking about at one time. Now, they could materialize and dematerialize quickly, but they could again materialize in another location to another pre-selected observer. So, I really believe that this is a phenomenon that is related to some type of a deceptive or mischievous, but I would like to describe more than mischievous. I would like to describe the word deceptive action by what I call extra-dimensional tricksters of old. And John A. Keel, who I highly respect. Now, I'll mention these three researchers who I highly respect, and they are John A. Keel, Dr. Jacques Vallée, and Dr. J. Allen Hynek. These three great researchers have come to the conclusion in the late 1970s that this phenomenon cannot be pursued by our empirical scientific methodology, because this phenomenon is most likely not a physical nuts and bolts phenomenon, but rather a phenomenon that intrudes into our dimension. Who is doing that? It's hard to say, because there is the difficulty. The difficulty is in the use of terminology. Some folks don't like certain words. Certain words bring up some kind of a religious connotation. And what I'm trying to say is that J. Allen Hynek said that there are definitely different levels of reality. J. Allen Hynek and Jacques Vallée wrote a book called The Edge of Reality back in 1977 or 1978. Because until that time, I was a tremendous supporter of the physical extraterrestrial origins of physical alien entities. I was a tremendous supporter of the ET hypothesis, or extraterrestrial origin hypothesis, of the origination of the UFO phenomenon. But in the late 1970s, after devouring these great books by John A. Keel, Dr. Jacques Vallée, and even J. Allen Hynek, I also came to depart from the support of extraterrestrial hypothesis. There are a few researchers in ufology that take the similar position as I do. But the big question is the use of terminology. Dr. Jacques Vallée, John A. Keel, as well as Dr. J. Allen Hynek, are not religious researchers. In fact, John A. Keel has never outwardly professed his Christian stance or biblical stance on this phenomenon, because he was not a religious person. Yet he used the word demonology. And I hate to use the word demonology because it conjures up a religious thing. And Dr. Jacques Vallée himself also used the word that the UFO phenomenon resembles some type of demonology. And he wasn't really a religious figure or a religious person. J. Allen Hynek either, But that's why I hate to use the word that conjures up religious thing. But I like to use the word malevolent as far as the purpose of some of these, or many of these tricksters of old. And, that does not mean, as far as I'm concerned, that in this humongous universe, that there are no entities or intelligences that are benevolent, in other words, have good intentions. And my conclusion is that to every malevolent entity that may be causing this thing, there are two benevolent entities, or I can only use the word entities because we don't know for sure, but judging from their action, these are malevolent or benevolent entities. How can I classify the alien abductions and all these things as a benevolent activity? I don't think so. It's for example, the alien abductions are basically reflective of very primitive methodology of investigating who we are, or investigating our biological makeup or whatever. Poking the poles or sticks into our bodies and causing pain is definitely not a sign of highly advanced extraterrestrial entities that want to help us, but rather it's an indication of a very, very, very primitive methodology. And so my conclusion, as well as conclusions of folks like John A. Keel or Jack Ballet, is that this phenomenon, at least the ones that are intruding or causing confusion in our world, certainly are not benevolent in nature, but malevolent. Some people call them tricksters, or some people call them mischievous, but it's not, it's more than mischievous, it's causing harm. And so this is the reason why I am very skeptical of this whole thing, but yet I declare that the phenomenon definitely seems to be real. And the big question is, what is the bottom line? And the bottom line is, we have yet to produce any kind of a souvenir or artifact, physical souvenir, from anyone that have come in contact with these entities.
Boy, fascinating information. Now, Norio, I want to discuss your article on an upcoming movie, your mother's 1975 sighting. Before we leave this comment of a more or less an advisory that there are aliens who are indeed are engaging in malevolent activities, what do you think, Norio, of any reports you might have researched or heard about regarding mental interface between the aliens and experiencers regarding downloads of information or alien teaching of their language and symbols to the experiencers, and also reports that now the aliens are teaching some experiencers how to operate their crafts through some type of symbiotic relationship between the craft operator and the vessel itself?
Well, that's an interesting question, but unfortunately, as I said, the alien abduction phenomenon and whatnot are things that we cannot actually debunk, because the persons that are experiencing those things are actually seeing something or experiencing something that we cannot explain physically. And this is the reason why, as I said, despite the tens of thousands and probably more of claims of alien abductions, The stories that are told by the experiencers differ so much and contradict each other. And this is the reason why Dr. Jacques Vallée has become skeptical about the claims of these so-called aliens. The aliens say that they came from this area, they came from that area. They tell of things that, but to others they tell contradictory. They have contradictory statements. And the biggest problem with all of this is the extreme number of visitations. Why do they have to visit physically? I'm telling you, tens of thousands of times just to find out about us. There's no need for it. And so this phenomenon is definitely a real phenomenon, but we have a problem with what reality is. We still don't know fully what reality is. Is it only a physical reality, or is there such thing as non-physical reality? In other words, a phenomenon that surpasses the physical realm. And as I said, and as many scientists have said, all we need is one tangible physical evidence from contacts with so-called aliens. Let's say, my favorite one is the Mr. Tyson, Neil deGrasse Tyson, who I highly respect, because he said at one time that all we need is any kind of a physical souvenir from alien abductions. Even, let's say, an ashtray of something tangible, but so far no one has come up with anything tangible or actual souvenir, resulting from these contacts. There have been allegations of tens of thousands of contacts, but yet we lack one single physical, tangible evidence. But yet the phenomenon seems to be real, and this is the reason why I'm so excited about a group of folks that have decided to create a documentary movie called Alien Intrusion. And I like the word intrusion because it is an intrusion or interference into our physical realm by some force that seems to have nebulous or even malevolent type of designs behind it. And this is the thing that I like to say. Yes, my conclusion is that in this humongous universe, the cosmos, there are probably countless number of entities that are not necessarily completely physical. I believe that there are many benevolent entities that could be having interaction with our people of the earth, but many times those entities are hard to be seen. The ones that are causing confusion, the ones that are interfering physically and trying to change our minds or anything like that, negative, are certainly malevolent in nature, and they are the ones that Dr. Jacques Vallée and others talk about, not about those entities that could be doing great things. But the problem is that many times we don't see them physically, or it's something that even I'm just quoting actually even from the Bible. The Bible says that this is the reason why I believe that to every malevolent entity, there are two benevolent entities. And this comes straight actually from the biblical source that says that in the beginning there was a universal cosmic revolution somehow, and 1/3 of all the celestial entities in the cosmos fell and aligned themselves with the malevolent, the leader. And there was this cosmic revolution. And this is the reason, my conclusion is that to every one malevolent one, there are two. In other words, the ratio is 1-2. In other words, 1/3 of all the cosmic entities are or have aligned themselves with the malevolent leader of the cosmic revolution that probably took place millions and millions eons ago in this whole wide universe. And this sounds strange coming from persons like me who are very skeptical of many things, but I think that there is definitely something to it.
Fascinating elements there to your arguments, Norio. And for our listeners, I wanted to reference the film that Norio had just mentioned. Now, he's written an article about it at his WordPress site. It's entitled The Alien Intrusion, Unmasking the Deception, a profound new documentary film to be released in U.S. theaters on January 11th, 2018. Norio is one of the consultants on this film. Excellent commentary by him in the film. Now, I've met some of the individuals in this film. Gary Bates is its creator. I believe his website is creation.com, and among its speakers are consultants such as Norio, Gary Bates, Joe Jordan, and Guy Malone. Now, the film website is alienintrusion.com, and now Norio has posted with his article 2 of the film trailers at his website there for the Civilian Intelligence Network. And you know, Norio, your comment in that article really floored me. That is, quote, the accuracy of documented facts arranged throughout such a wide range of content in this film is simply unprecedented and staggering, end quote.
That is correct, because I have yet to see any documentary film that has the wide spectrum of outlook on this whole phenomenon. This is the first film ever, as far as I'm concerned, and I highly commend Gary Bates for creating this film. And this doesn't have to be. This is not necessarily, as far as I'm concerned, a religious film, but I believe that the things that are brought up in this film are so real and unprecedented. As I said, besides those individuals, there is Nick Redfern, who, in my opinion, is more open to this type of thing than other people. I was very pleased that Nick Redfern participated in this film. And this film, basically, the theme of this film is that the abductions are real. The UFO phenomena are real. But the bottom line is that this is an intrusion of malevolent, paraphysical entities that are deceiving a whole bunch of folks right now on Earth and posing as emissaries or extraterrestrial, highly advanced people from highly advanced extraterrestrial civilization. I'm saying the word posing. And that is the word I also like to use many times. They seem to be posing as extraterrestrial, physical, highly advanced folks from outer space visiting our Earth. And the deception is this, that it's not trusting. I wouldn't trust these entities at all because of the fruits. You can tell by the fruits the result of their contact and interference into this earth. And, that's what can I say? And I may sound like a lunatic. Some people who listen to me probably think that I'm a religious nut, or I am some kind of fundamentalist Christian, or some kind of a biblical a person, but I am not. I am just saying that this is the only alternative to the explanation to the strange phenomenon called the UFO phenomenon that has always existed from time immemorial. It's not the first time. I mean, people have seen in the medieval ages flying shields, and people describe, something shaped like a religious object or something in the Middle Ages. But in the modern ages, these things appear to reflect the culture and understanding of that time. So in the 1800s, a lot of people have seen strange object that resembled, which later came out to be airships, in the 1800s.
Right.
And in the modern space age, yes, their shape have become more aerodynamic, so my thing is that, yes, this phenomenon seems to adjust to the cultural and technological understanding of the people of whichever era they seem to intrude into. What can I say? Because I think that Dr. Jacques Vallée is right, that this phenomenon has existed since time immemorial, but has the capability to adjust to each historical epoch that we're living.
Fascinating information there. Now, Norio, I wanted to thank you as well that on September 24th, you posted at your Civilian Intelligence News website a copy of the Declaration of Human Sovereignty and Freedom from Extraterrestrial Nations, drafted and published by the Human Sovereignty Organization. It is related to Marshall V. N. Summers. Now, that text does seem to belong to the Declaration of Human Sovereignty, which I read several years ago when it was first published. Some of its arguments and presentations are most compelling. And for our listeners, the Human Sovereignty Organization is humansovereignty.org. Now, just a comment here. Norio, I was fascinated by their elaboration of fundamental human rights with such excellent categories as the right of sovereignty, the right of planetary sanctity, the right of sanctity of biological and genetic material, the right of occupation, the right of peaceful navigation, with all these key rights belonging to the humans residing on our planet. I'm awfully glad you posted that article.
Yes, I believe that it is well written, and it has a lot of excellent points about what's happening, that we are slowly being infiltrated by those that have the intention of changing our way of thinking to accommodate our allegiance to these entities. And I commend folks like Marshall Summers, however, for writing this declaration. It's very compelling, as you said, but this does not mean that I am a follower of Marshall Summers. Marshall Summers simply took many of the concepts from the Bible. And it's very similar to the biblical understanding that, yes, there are many entities that have existed from time immemorial in extra dimensional level that have caused a lot of problems. And but at the same time, Marshall Summers also say that there are benevolent entities in this cosmos that have not taken any action. But it's the reason is that it's very similar to biblical quotes that, yes, there are probably many benevolent forces in this world, but the benevolent forces are the forces that sometimes we cannot see, but they may be doing great actions and helping us in some ways, in many ways. But the ones that we see, unfortunately, are the ones that are interfering in our dimension and causing or brainwashing us in a wrong direction and pushing us to be allegiant, to pay homage to these entities that have no good intentions. And so in this sense, I commend Marshall Thomas for creating this Declaration of Human Sovereignty. It's a great item. But of course, do I think Marshall Thomas is a prophet? It's hard to say. But the danger of following a person is that this can always lead into a personality worship or even a cultic situation. But the ideas are certainly, I think, very logical and reasonable. And it even coincides with the biblical understanding of the cosmos and existence of these forces, both good forces as well as evil forces.
Really intriguing. Now, Norio, I want to apologize because we didn't delve into your mother's 1975 sighting. You also describe at your website your two sightings here in the United States. Do you have any comments to make about them in 2 minutes remaining regarding your mother's sighting? Knowing that she is your mother, I definitely would guess that she's highly intelligent, has excellent powers of observation. How did she reconcile herself to seeing a UFO sighting?
Well, she was a total skeptic because she used to make fun of her husband, who used to tell us at the dinner table when I was growing up in Yokohama, Japan. He used to tell of his amazing sighting of a greenish ball of fire, intelligently controlled, he claims, by something, and which he witnessed in the summer of 1947. And my mother was kind of skeptical about that. But I became interested in ufology since that time. But as I said, my mother sent me a letter in 1975 while I was living in Phoenix, Arizona, that particular morning she encountered this flying saucer hovering over a train station in Yokohama, Japan in a broad daylight, and there were hundreds and hundreds of people walking the streets of Yokohama as soon as she disembarked from the train station. But something told her to look back. And she looked back towards the train station, and lo and behold, she saw a silverish flying saucer with a dome hovering silently over the train station, at which time she pointed that to her grandson to turn around and look. But at that time, that object completely vanished. I mean, dematerialized. That's the word I can describe. So do I believe her? 100%. 100% I believe her. But the question is that conclusive evidence that actual physical alien was there in a physical alien spacecraft? That is a separate question. And that is the main thing that I am interested as I continue with my research from this new angle of ufology.
Norio, thank you so very much for joining us tonight for an extremely informational and thought-provoking interview. Also, thanks to our listeners for joining us tonight for Global Newsmaker Focus on your contact for Alternative Talk Radio, KGRA-radio.com. Now following our show, Global Newsmaker Focus, are two excellent programs, Dark Matters Radio with Don Ecker, and then Jill Hansen's Q Science Project. Thank you again, Norio.
Thank you
Good
so
night.
much.
What an honor, and good night, everyone.